I'm Stella Collins from Stella Learning, and I'm here to chair the session today. Can everybody hear okay? Let's get that sorted first of all. So, welcome to this session. It's going to be a really interesting session looking at how to engage people who are perhaps not, don't have access to learning in the normal way, perhaps not your average business organisational learner. We've got three really interesting stories. We've got one from St James's Place, we've got one from the Co-op, and we've got one from G4S, so three very different kind of organisations. Our speakers have all come to tell us their stories, and the way we're going to work it is they're going to take about 15 or so minutes to tell their stories. And if you've got kind of a clarification question at the end of their session, please feel free to ask questions. We've got a roving mic. But at the end, what we want to do then is kind of wrap it up with some general questions around, what are the links between what they've seen, what are the links that you've pulled together, what are the differences in what they've done, what's worked, and perhaps, what you think, what you learn from the session so that you can take away something practical and realistic. So just before I introduce the speakers, just spend a minute each talking to the person next to you and thinking about what you want to get out of the session. Why have you attended this particular session? So just a minute each to say to somebody else why you're here. Okay, so I am going to introduce Guy, and he is from not G4S, he's from St James's Place. I've got all sorts of saints on my head here. St James's Place, and he's going to start with his story. Thank you, Guy.
Thank you very much, Stella. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be speaking at the Learning Technologies Conference today. I must confess, this is my first time doing this at this conference, and I'm terribly excited and slightly nervous at the same time. So you all look like a very friendly crowd, which is great, but be gentle. Before I get into our story from St James's Place, just to reflect on a few words there from Stella, Angie, myself and Jackie have coordinated our presentations today and already highlighted and understand where the similarities and differences may be in our stories and our journey. So whilst we acknowledge that where we've got to in terms of outcomes might be quite similar, our starting point and our journeys are quite different. So whatever your motivation for being in the room today, hopefully between the three presentations there'll be something there for everybody. So we were also just reflecting on the title, I'll go back actually, the title of the overall session, and it sounds quite futuristic, across the enterprise and beyond, so I will avoid the temptation to make any Star Trek references or being Captain Kirk. Okay, before I get into the St James's Place story, I thought it might be helpful to you just to provide a bit of context in terms of who we are and what we do, and actually you'll then see the opportunity and challenge we face and faced 5 years ago in determining how we scale our learning and development offering, not just across the UK, but also to our colleagues in Asia. We have locations in Singapore, Shanghai, and Hong Kong too. So, as many of you will probably know, St James's Place is a wealth management organisation, and we have a number of regulated individuals across the UK and Asia, some 3,661 in total, as of the last count. And our journey has been rapid in terms of opening the doors to business in 1992. So Sir Mark Weinberg and Mike Wilson created the company in 1991. We opened the doors for business in 1992, and we find ourselves as a FTSE 100 company less than 25 years later. So our growth, it's fair to say, has been exponential, and our challenge, therefore, in terms of providing appropriate learning and development across the UK and Asia has meant that we've had to do some different things and also had to do things differently. So 2012, beg your pardon, so just over 5 years ago, we looked at what we could do differently and how we would scale our operation. Just to give you a bit of context, actually, so I've been with St James's Place 18 years. When I joined as a training consultant. I now run the L&D division for the organisation, but I joined as a training consultant, and in 2001, I doubled the size of the training team, so from 1 trainer to 2. Today, it's still a relatively compact and small team, small but perfectly formed, we'd like to think, of about 15 training consultants, an administration arm, and also a team that looks after our learning management system, which we call My Development, and also a team that looks after the creation and maintenance of our online content. In total, as a division, we're still about 40-45 people, so still relatively small compared to the audience, the size of the audience that we serve across the UK and in Asia. So you can kind of see the scale of the opportunity and the challenge at the same time. So in earnest, we looked at technology and the use of a learning management system, and we introduced in 2012 a platform with net dimensions, and some of you will know of that, I'm sure. And we used the platform predominantly in 3 ways. So event management, and I'll talk about these individually in a second, online accreditation exams, and probably most importantly, a repository for allowing access to folk all around the world to online content and multimedia. So, event management, what does that do for us? So, it enables us to publish and make people aware of our offering, whether that be generic technical training or SJP market propositional training in terms of our product range and services, or indeed soft skills training. So we can enable people to self-enroll, or if we want to be a bit more discreet about what we're offering, we can push enroll for a particular population, for a particular course or event. What that does, of course, it streamlines that process, and it makes sure that we can automate things like joining instructions and descriptors around each event in terms of the purpose of each event, who would be best suited, learning outcomes, learning objectives, etc. It also enables us to provide comprehensive management information in terms of who's done what, when, and how, which is incredibly useful to lots of aspects of the business, but indeed ourselves in determining what our future offering looks like in terms of demand. So that's a little bit about event management. Moving on to accreditation exams, for those of you that are familiar with financial services, you'll know that we operate in a regulated environment, and there are lots of exams that must be done. They're compulsory, and you would also not be surprised to know that there are a number of internal exams that we ask advisors. Our collective term for our advisors, the partnership, and individuals are partners. There are many exams that we ask partners to pass and prove their competence in a particular market area before they can give client advice. So there are a number of exams that need to be taken on a fairly regular basis, and prior to 2012, guess how all exams were undertaken? Manually, written on paper, sent in, had to be marked, invigilated. Can you imagine the amount of resource that takes to individually invigilate? Got some else's teeth this morning. Huge amounts of resource. So we use the opportunity of introducing the learning management system to automate internal accreditation exams online. And initially, we were kind of criticised for doing that in terms of one of the principles that we employed from day one was to try and replicate the exam process with real life in terms of the process that an advisor will go through when they are advising clients. And of course, it's not about a test of memory. It's about understanding the client situation and being able to go back and make an informed recommendation. So taking the exam to demonstrate competence, we made them open book. So partners were able and are able to refer to the reference material that they would refer to in real life when they take online exams. Just to make it slightly more difficult, though, they are timed. So a partner can't take an exam over a 12-hour period. It will be 20 minutes, half an hour, etc. But it has absolutely revolutionised the way that we determine and deem competence across the partnership in various areas, including market areas, but also regulatory areas too. And again, provides us with lots of useful MI across the business in terms of who is accredited to give advice in which area. So that's online exams. So coming on to online content. So online content, digital learning, remote learning, digital media, for me, they're all an all-encompassing phrase. So I use online content, but acknowledge openly that there are various mediums that we employ. So this is a real strive, a real effort from our point of view to blend our learning offering. Prior to 2012, it was absolutely not a one-trick pony, but a two-trick pony in terms of two mediums, which was the written word, so study guides and reference material, and face-to-face training, both of which are wholly legitimate and appropriate in terms of mediums for learning and development, but fairly narrow, actually, in its application. And thinking about the topic, the subject here today, in terms of expanded learning, we were limiting what we could deliver to the partnership, not just in the UK, but internationally as well. So over the past 5 years, and I don't profess to say we got it right from day one, but we have developed a range of content, online content, which we deploy through My Development, our LMS, ranging from reading material, interactive e-learning, webinars, videos, audio content, and everything that you can imagine in between. And one principle that we deliberately employed from day one, and it's a principle that holds true today, is that we try and use content on the LMS to help people gain factual knowledge. Whether that's generic technical or market-specific or SJP propositional, yes, you can deliver that training very successfully on a face-to-face basis, but actually, over the years, our demographic age in the partnership is lowering and people expect to self-serve a little bit. So enabling people to gain knowledge ever before they come to a face-to-face workshop enables us to focus our time in the face-to-face environment on applying that knowledge, making it sticky and helping people think about how they can translate that to their working life in their particular job role. So that's a principle we determined right at the beginning and has held true. So wherever we can, we will use the online content range of media to enhance and help people gain technical or generic knowledge. Now, that's not to say that there are instances where face-to-face training alone might be more applicable, and from our perspective, our experience is where that tends to hold true is with soft skills training. Now, that's not me saying that using online content and a platform like an LMS, you can't deliver successful soft skills training, but we have chosen to use our LMS in that way, which enables the face-to-face resource to be applied to application of knowledge and also soft skills. So, accessibility. So this is kind of a key point, and I'm sure many of you are thinking, so how have you done this? So we have effectively created an on-demand 24/7 portal where people can access content relevant to their learning journey at that time, and they can fit their development plan, their journey, around other things in their life. So their busy professional life and also, busy personal lives too. And that's, again, me not saying that there's no benefit to coming to a one-day or a two-day or a three-day face-to-face course, but there's so much that can be done prior to that event much more efficiently. And actually, I would say, unresoundingly, our partnership have thanked us for that. Certainly in the beginning, I used to get a lot of commentary from folk who would say, fantastic, thanks for that guy. I did that piece of learning in my armchair at 1 o'clock in the morning. It suited me, it was in my time, and great, job done. And it hasn't interfered with my personal life or my professional life in terms of when I can go and see clients. Today, we probably deliver, that's quite a broad statement, but we probably do deliver 2/3 of our overall development offering via our LMS platform. So just to finish, it would be remiss of me to paint this utopia picture in terms of how wonderful it is to create online content and the accessibility and the diverse range of mediums without perhaps commenting on some of the considerations and challenges. So this isn't about me either trying to attract or repel you in terms of considering online content, but perhaps to give you a balanced picture. So in terms of challenges and considerations, just a couple of pieces of food for thought, really, which is if you think about the development time, so the lead-in time in terms of creating online content, whether that be e-learning or one of those other mediums, even if it's a quick and dirty in terms of a voiced-over PowerPoint, it still takes longer in its lead time than it would be perhaps to create a PowerPoint presentation and a set of tools that you would deliver face-to-face. So that's just me being really honest in terms of there are some other considerations to take account of. And of course, with that came actually a huge mindset and bit of cultural change for us in terms of how we approach this, because prior to 2012, all of our training delivery was either the written word, study guides, or face-to-face. So moving into a very different world, we had a number of people who would say, no, I'm a technophobe, I don't do technology, and thank you very much, my learning style is much more in the classroom, please spoon feed me. So we never took that away completely, but it did take time and effort. So we had to be proactive in our hearts and minds piece in terms of helping people walk towards using blended technology or blended learning. And finally, my consideration would be not just the additional lead-in time to creating online content, but of course it's the back end of the process as well in terms of maintaining and updating that content. And sometimes, especially if it's the updates or amends are driven fiscally, it may be that actually it isn't a question of just changing nil-rate bans and exemptions, etc. You may have to rewrite or re-record a piece of learning. So just bear that in mind. I would say, for the first 2 years, put all our effort into the front end of filling the hopper up with blended learning content, and then 2 years down the road thought, we really ought to be giving consideration to, is this still appropriate? Does it have a shelf life? And if it doesn't, what do we do about it? So me being perfectly honest, hands up, it probably took us 2 years to really get underneath that and have a robust process to make sure that whatever content was there wasn't just fit for purpose when it was originally created, but it was also fit for purpose for a duration. So that kind of brings me to the end of our story. If anybody has any specific clarification questions to ask now, I'll do that, and then I'll hand over. Yes. I think a mic might be on its way to you.
You mentioned that your work is very highly regulated, and which is understandable with the stuff that you do. Within the learning management system, did you face any challenges around auditing and record keeping so that you can produce data to show that your employees are accredited to do their work?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because prior to 2012, when everything was manual and face-to-face, that whole process, that record-keeping, MI, audit, was completely manual. Using an LMS has enabled us to automate that and provide different parts of the business access directly. So, for example, financial crime prevention, so things like anti-money laundering, data security, that kind of stuff, which is compulsory in our world. That's the remit of a particular function within St James's Place, not the learning and development function. We also provide the support for the development, but the regulatory responsibility sits with the money laundering reporting officer. So to enable that individual and their team to control the mechanics of that and see at a touch of a button who's done what and when and how, and does enable us to have a really good relationship with the regulator, because we can provide information really quickly, expediently, and it's accurate. Yeah.
One more quick one.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Of course, I sympathize with your challenges.
Yes.
And share them. I'm curious to understand a bit better how you went about the challenge of updating and rewriting. You mentioned the process. Do you actually have a process of timed reviews and owners?
Yes.
It would be great if you could explain.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be really honest here in that we weren't good at this in the beginning, and we kind of got caught out a little bit on more than one occasion where we thought, no, that's out of date. That's not just misleading, that's totally inaccurate factually. So what we set about was, we've got a process now whereby every piece of content on the system has an assigned owner. And that could be someone from the learning and development team, or it may be one of our technicians or a subject matter expert in another part of the business. And it's their responsibility to let us know in the beginning when we publish that content what shelf life it will have. So we actually are now into a process of auto-archiving content. So we de-risk a little bit in terms of things being on there too long. And of course, we still have the flexibility if the owner of that content thinks, no, actually, there hasn't been a huge change in that area, this is still worthy and valid content, can we please extend its duration and put it back online? Then we can do that. But there's a formal process that makes sure that happens continually throughout the year. And we've had to designate resource to do that. So that doesn't come without its resource cost. So we have somebody who looks up, that's a full-time job for somebody.
Full-time dedicated to keeping everything up to date?
Absolutely, and making sure that if it's not content that we've created within the L&D division, that's being looked at and reviewed regularly by the appropriate area of the business. Yeah, so we didn't get that right straight off.
If you've still got a question, can I ask you to hang on to it until the other speakers have spoken?
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your consideration. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Angie now from Group 4 Security. So as Angie just gets up and gets started, I'll do a bit of electrickery with the presentation.
Thanks, Guy.
There we go.
Thank you very much. Morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to our session today. Hopefully, between Guy, Jackie and myself, we'll be able to give you an insight into how we've used technology to improve our offering to our learners, and hopefully we can answer any questions that you've got around that as well. My name is Angie Wagstaff. I work for G4S, a large global security company. It's a huge company, and as you would imagine, it's broken down into smaller areas. So I work for the Secure Solutions section, and within there we have an events section. So I work for the events, and we provide event stewards for sporting events, conference exhibitions, concerts, that kind of thing. I've worked for events for about 18 years, and I'm very passionate about what I do, and particularly around the level of learning and development that we offer to our staff that help support them in their role going forward. So it was really important to me when we were looking at moving into technology, how that would actually help engage the learners and... It's okay. And support them in their role. Just a little bit of context to what we do. Right back when I first started, the training that was regulatory mandated for event stewards was very minimal, really. You got a company induction if you were lucky, and that was it. If you were available on a Saturday and willing to travel, you got the job. As you would imagine, legislation, the way the world's changing, the way events are changing, things are very different now, and we are quite tightly regulated, and there's a comprehensive training package that we need to give to staff, both regulatory but also company-led as well. There's certain aspects, obviously, that the company want to pass on. Our workforce is quite a diverse workforce. The vast majority are casual workers. So they work for us evenings, weekends when they're available. Outside of that, they've got other commitments. So university students, it fits well with their timetables. We have people that are passionate about football or particular events that want to come along and support that and work for us in that capacity. And we have a small cohort that, although they're casual workers, come and work for us full time. So we have a diverse workforce that the majority are very busy doing other things apart from working for us, and then they come along usually out of a passion for what the event they're working for. And then when they get the job, although actually now we tend to tell them before, but generally they get in there and then realise there's all this training that they need to do as well. Initially, back sort of 5 years ago, we really stuck with the face-to-face classroom delivery. I'm not really sure why. I think it worked at the time, so we kept on with it. But gradually, as there were more demands on the amount of training that we had to give to the staff, it became apparent that the classroom wasn't working. The staff were already busy, and we were then asking them to come into a classroom on top of everything else they were doing to carry out the training, which if you're only doing a company induction is fine, but then when you're adding all the other elements of the training package onto it, it became very time consuming and not practical for a lot, particularly the ones that are working full time or have got other commitments. So we were beginning within the business to look at how could we be more effective in delivering to the large numbers. The business had already started looking at technology for other aspects, for wage slips, for contacting their managers in other areas, and we already had what we call our ESS, our employee self-service, where staff would log in and they could contact whichever department they needed to. So they'd started this small transition into technology, but we hadn't gone really very far as training was concerned. We did have a very basic company induction online, but it became apparent we needed to look to be more effective when we were looking to deliver the mandatory training, formal level 2 qualification. The company, the business side, what the business needed to know, we could not get away with, but it wasn't so important that the staff completed that. But the level 2 qualification they had to complete, and bringing them into the classroom wasn't working, so we had to look elsewhere for that. A chance meeting at a CIPD conference, I went along, and years ago when I was first introduced to stewarding, we completed our level 2. A tribal had put together a portfolio. If you completed the portfolio correctly, then you were on 3/4 of the way to completing your level 2. And I spoke to them at this conference thinking this might be the idea for our guys because they could do it distance learning. But they didn't do the books anymore. So that was the end of that. I did look around the conference and came away and never thought anything else about it. And then I got a phone call from a company called the Skills Network. Not really related to the level 2, but another training package that they were discussing. To be fair, I was quite put out that Tribal had given my number out, because if you're in L&D, you're probably used to phone calls about what they can do for you and the promises that you get. But we went to we arranged a meeting, my line manager and myself, and the representative came along, and we discussed the training that they'd offered, but then we started to discuss the challenges we were having around the level 2. Sorry guys, I'm a bit dry this morning. And they said not only could they offer us funding for the level 2, which was music to my line manager's ears, but also that they had this platform where they could offer the option for the staff to complete it online. So as you can imagine, we were all ears. But always in the back of our mind, the promises we've had before from other companies that they could deliver this. So we went along, thinking all the way along that something was going to chuck up, and actually it wouldn't be for our learners. Because we had visited other e-learning companies that offered and went to look around to see what they could deliver for us. The problem is, was for us, and it still is now, even though G4S is a huge company, the event side, much like Guy, although we've got a few more than two, but much like Guy, we were a very small training team, and we were tasked to deliver the package to the 6,000 plus workforce. So we didn't have the back-end support, which is why we probably didn't go down the e-learning route initially, to support the learners outside of the classroom that were being online at all hours in the morning, and were having challenges with computers, that kind of thing. When we went to look at the Skills Network, we were invited along to go and have a look around. We were blown away by what they could offer us. So they were already set up to deliver mass numbers. They had established connections with awarding bodies, and they had the support network, which was crucial to us for the learner and also for the employer. So they could offer us the reports, regular reports. We had an audit trail. We do have an audit trail, and they could offer us all that. So we decided we would go ahead with that. It was very much a partnership approach, and still is with the Skills Network. They have got the expertise and the resources to support what we need, and we had got the expertise as far as knowledge around the events business, and also what we would want for our employees as well as far as the content. So we went ahead with our level 2, put it online, and then launched it to the business, to the staff. With mixed reviews, I have to say. We have a large cohort of students who, even at that time, were asking for, can we do this online? And certainly now want to be able to do it on every piece of technology they've got. The Anytime, Anywhere learning was certainly something we were being asked for, but we also had a small cohort of staff, shall we say, of a certain age, that were not comfortable using computers. Some didn't even have computers. So we had to look at how could we ensure they weren't disadvantaged. And I have to say, when we launched, we were all excited about launching the e-learning. We'd not really considered that maybe some of our staff didn't even have a computer to be able to complete it. So we had to look how we could facilitate that for them, and we decided that we would offer dates and times where they could come into the office, and we had a few computers. It weren't a large amount of staff, but enough to require us to facilitate them to come and be able to complete their learning. And so that's what we did. Now, 5 years on, there's an expectation that the learning will be online if it can be. So when we are looking to produce any different modes of learning for staff, the first thing we get asked is, can we do it online? Because it saves them having to come into the classroom to do that. Outsourcing to the Skills Network as well, and it gives us the level of comfort that the staff are getting the support they need. So once they register online, so they come to our ESS, they get their payroll number, they register online, and they get a link to go straight to the Skills Network to complete not just their level 2, I'll go on to what else we do later on, but other parts of the learning as well. And they are assigned a mentor who contacts them, explains the learning to them, and is there to support them if they need it. So they can ring up their mentor if they're having any challenges. But we don't just pass it on to the Skills Network, we work with the company as well, because not all our learners, bless them, are perfect students and go through and complete in the time that they're supposed to. So there are times when the Skills Network will contact us and say, Joe Bloggs needs a little bit of a push with these missed deadlines. And that's where their managers can contact them, because the staff are more likely to answer a phone call from their manager than they would be maybe from a learning development company. So it's not a pass it on to another company and leave it with them, it's very much a partnership approach to the success of what we've had with our transition into e-learning. And support and monitor as well for the staff, so not just expecting that everyone is savvy with technology and can get on with it straight away. So we offer the support to staff as well if there are any challenges. We did, about 2 years into the project, we did discuss as a business that we really should give the employees the choice of completing online or completing in the classroom. So we actually sent out an employee survey, asking the questions and asking for feedback. Overwhelmingly, surprisingly to me, because I really thought we would have more people who would want to come into the classroom, overwhelmingly we got the majority that were happy with the e-learning, with the support they were getting, and that's the way that they wanted to carry on. So it has been a success story for us, but it's as Guy said, it's not utopia, it's not the be-all and end-all. There are aspects of our training that don't fit with e-learning, so we have a front-of-stage barrier training where the staff used to come in all day and we would deliver half a day theory and half a day they would be out there doing the practical. The practical obviously can't be done online, but what it has done is helped us now. We use the best time in the classroom and the staff complete the theory before they come in. So it gives us that opportunity to, A, don't expect them to come in all day, but we make the most use of their time in the classroom to deliver the practical side as well. Also, expanding on what we, on the level 2, we looked at the way we deliver briefings to our staff. So the staff come along to the events, they don't just, not all of them work one event, they'll travel around the country. And particularly for the events where they were staying away, even though we sent out communications about, you'll be camping, don't expect that there's going to be tea and coffee at events, things like that, we would get staff turn up, particularly on the overnights for camping, without tents, bless them, without the warm clothing, not really having an understanding about what the event is. So we looked at how could we use the e-learning to deliver this information prior to them arriving on site. And we developed what we called our virtual events page, which has been a great success. And for the events where our guys, most of the events where they work, and for new contracts that come along, we build a new, well, I say we, the Skills Network, we give them the content, the Skills Network build the virtual events page. And it gives the staff then an insight into the event, what to expect, what they need to bring with them, and deliver the main points of the briefing before they get to site. Of course, that doesn't overtake from the on-the-day briefing, because things change. It just gives them that overview and cuts down on some of the challenges we have with staff turning up without the right equipment, for instance. Also expanding on the concept, once the rest of the business were looking at our figures of achievement for the level 2 and other areas of training, they were understandably wanted to know how we were managing to deliver the level of training we were, the quality as well, because that's the other side. We needed the e-learning to be a quality product. We wanted to engage the learners and we wanted it to be credible. So the business looked at our figures and what we were achieving and wanted to know how we were doing that, and they would like a slice of it. And so now the rest of the business is looking at what areas of their training they can put onto an e-learning platform, what fits with it, and how that all works. For us, the success has been really because we've had this partnership with an external company. We didn't have the resources to be able to develop it ourselves. So that for us has been the key to our success. And also being able to have this audit trail, so we get the regular reports, we get the regular partnership interaction with the company as well. So any new learning that comes along, we will sit down and discuss what's required, how that might fit with the e-learning, and how can we make it different to the last piece of e-learning, which is important. So when our guys, I call them our guys, when the staff log on, they're not seeing the same format. It's exciting and new for them. So it has been a success story for us. It's not the answer to all our learning, but it has helped to facilitate the large amount of training that our guys need to do, and prevented us having to keep bringing them into the classroom to do that. And for us, the figures speak for themselves of the achievements compared to just getting into a classroom really before we even got down to looking at getting them through the qualification. Okay, so any questions, guys? Well, that's either I've done really well or...
Any immediate questions?
Yes, lovely.
You had the challenges of the less technologically aware learners. What sort of solutions did you come up with for engaging them?
Well, first of all, we put on sessions to bring them into the classroom to get them used to being on a computer. So our IT section, they led all that. They came in, familiarised themselves with the computer, and really took away that scary element of being on there. And then really step by step taking them through the different elements of the qualification. So some pitched up really quickly, others needed a little bit more time with them, but whatever time they needed, they were brought back in at their convenience really to come in and step by step take them through the level 2 at the time. We don't get so much now from the learners that we get coming through now, whether people are more savvy now in using computers. But at the outset, we did have a small cohort that we needed to support them through completing their level 2. Thank you.
We're going to have Jackie Belcher from Co-op telling her story.
Hiya everyone. So I just had a bit of a microphone issue there, but I've got one now. You can hear me, can't you? Good. So I'm Jackie, I'm from the Co-op. It's great hearing the stories from Angie and Guy today. Mine's similar but different at the same time, because my story doesn't start with a sort of long established training function that then needed to change with developments in technology. I was very lucky, probably about a year ago, to be given the chance and a bit of a blank sheet of paper with something very new and different for the Co-op, and to create a learning approach pretty much from scratch in a whole different way. So that's super exciting. There's a lot of challenges along the way on that journey as well, though. So I'll kind of just take you through where I've come from and where I'm up to now in what is still something that's very new and evolving over these next few months and years. So I'll tell you a bit first about our Co-op and what it means to work for the Co-op. So we're the Co-op, we've got 4 million members. They're active members that are trading with us. We've actually got a few more than that don't regularly trade. We are member-owned. We are a true cooperative. It's brilliant to work for a Co-op knowing that every bit of effort you put in comes back round and benefits our members and our communities and the people in it. That means a lot to me. It's not about the few people at the top. Everything comes back round. It's that cycle of reciprocity. And it's very important to everyone that works within the Co-op and extremely important to me. We're the Co-op that has a Co-op in every postcode area. So no matter where you live, you probably will interact with the Co-op in some way or other. So we're the Co-op that has the Co-op food stores. We have Co-op funeral care homes, Co-op insurance, Co-op electrical, and Co-op legal services as well. So we're a group of businesses. We're no longer the Co-op bank. People still associate us with the bank. We separated from the Co-op bank a number of years ago. And we now have around 70,000 colleagues, so we're quite a large organisation. And at the core of our purpose is championing a better way of doing business for you and your communities. And that communities part is what's super important to me, as I work within the community strategy and change team. And we were tasked with the next stage really of the Co-op and how we can really grow what our members get involved in and grow what's important to the Co-op and making that community difference. Around September 2016, we reinvigorated our membership offer and what it means to be a member of the co-op. We were finding that the co-op had a membership base that was ageing. It was seen as quite old-fashioned. So you might have noticed we used to be like the cooperative, and it was all like the green signs, which are still around in some stores now. We rebranded, we went back to being the co-op, which is what everyone called us anyway, which is what we used to be, and we changed our membership offer, and now anything you spend on own brand products within the co-op, you get 5% back for you and 1% for your community, and that 1% is the bit that's important. That goes and has gone, we've given £20 million away to 8,000 local causes across the UK. And that's starting to make a real difference. So I wanted to give you that context of the co-op. I'm not here to sell you being a co-op member, but do join. I feel it needs that explanation so you can understand more about the role that I'm going to talk about and the learning offer that needed to apply to it. So thinking about all that great stuff, one thing we weren't that great at doing is connecting and bringing it all together. So we identified the need around this time last year to create this role of a member pioneer. A member pioneer is there to be an active member within their community. They're not colleagues, they are members. And that's what's different from a learning and development perspective. We're not training colleagues, we're training members. And we want them to be connected, bringing all this good stuff together, so the 8,000 local causes, the 70,000 colleagues, and all the members that are within our communities, bringing people together to cooperate and do more and make more of a difference. They're catalysts, so they're not there to do it all, but they're there to try and inspire others to get stuck in. And they're communicators. So as a co-op, we're not very good at shouting about all the good stuff we do. People tend to rate Tesco's more highly when they talk about community activity than the co-op, and we do so much more. In fact, about 10 times more. So we need to get better at shouting about it. So we want our member pioneers to communicate. So far then, so we started recruiting our first member pioneers back in May, and we started with just 50 member pioneers. We now have 214 member pioneers enroll, and we aim for by 2020 to have 1,500. So it's a growing role and a growing area for us. And then the task that came to me was to create a training programme for them. Probably not to create a training programme for them, actually. I think the task that came to me was, Jackie, can you put together some slides for a little induction? And we'll just bring everyone along and we'll just train them with some slides. Obviously, I knew that probably wasn't going to work with such a different bunch of people, and doesn't really work for anyone. So started to think about this a bit more broadly. So these are the challenges that we faced with this. So our member pioneers are geographically dispersed. One thing we can say in the co-op, our member pioneers really are Land's End to John O'Groats. So we've got people in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, we've got people over in Northern Ireland, and we've got people, a member pioneer that lives in St Ives and Cornwall, lucky thing. And then we've got everyone somewhere in between, in rural areas, in urban cities, so they're scattered. So that's a challenge. It's not easy just to get everyone together in one place. It's a home-based role, which is quite different for the co-op. So most of our co-op colleagues will work and be based in a food store or a funeral care home or an office. These guys don't have that. They're based in their own homes. They're only working for us for 16 hours a month, not a week, a month. So that's like 4 hours a week on average. This is a really small little addition to whatever else they do within their lives, is that they are also a member pioneer. So it has that challenge of, I can't take them out for days on end delivering training and development for them for their role. I need to train them in quite a quick and short space of time so they don't just spend all the time training and none of that 16 hours doing. I mentioned before they're not colleagues, so what they are is actually quite a funny legal status of a worker status. So they're not employed by the co-op, but they work with us, so they are paid. It's not a volunteer role, but it's kind of somewhere in between. So it's a minimum wage role, or close to minimum wage, I think it's a little bit over. And it has this worker status. Now that status in itself, brings challenges from an L&D perspective, because what you can't do, if you're an employee and we ask you to do some training, you've kind of got to do it, and you might be a bit reluctant, but we can send out strong reminders and we can have words in development discussions and say, you've not done your training. With these guys, we can't actually do that. We can put it out there, and if they do it, they do it, and if they don't, they don't. So that's a little bit of a challenge. You can't mandate it. They're a diverse group of people, so these people that we've got in these roles now, we've got everything. We've got people that during the day are lawyers, we've got teachers, we've got people that work in our food and funeral care homes, and we've got students, we've got retirees. So for probably the broadest learner base I've probably ever developed anything for, we can't really say what walks of life people are going to be coming to and what education they might have, etc. So a very diverse group of people. And the phased recruitment also posed a bit of a challenge as well, because we didn't know how quickly or how slowly we were going to start recruiting these. We need to test and learn and develop and grow. And what we weren't going to do, kind of would have been easier if we'd gone, right, 1,500 member pioneers all starting in one small time frame, because then we could just train them all and they'll all be going through the same journey together. Because it's been phased in this way, we've got smatterings of people, 50 people at a time all over the country, not in one geographical area but everywhere, that we need to get through the training. So that kind of poses a bit of a challenge as well. So I'll take you through what I did. If my slides work, press it, there we go. So it looks fancier than there is, but the idea is, so if you're a member pioneer on your first day, right, your first day is not going to be in an office or in a store. You're not going to go in and go, this is your desk and this is where you work, and have colleagues and people around you where you can ask for questions. Your first day is going to be at home. So what you get as a member pioneer on your first day is you get a nice little package in the post, and you get a little guide. Should have brought some guides. Get a little member pioneer guide, a few pages long, that kind of gets you started. That was an iteration we made recently, because we had this idea of everything being digital, but having that paper thing that prompts you to then get digital, we've actually found we've got a better uptake of the digital stuff. So you get a paper guide with a few key points, a quick get started guide that gets you going on all of this. So you'll go through that, and you'll do some really great e-learning modules. So there are 5 e-learning modules that we've built for this role. And remember, we're training them, when I explain that role, it's being a connector, being a catalyst, being a communicator. We're not training them on stacking shelves or doing some, these are quite hard things and concepts to get your head around. It's a kind of woolly role to some extent. So to try and build those into e-learning modules is quite a challenge. And we partnered up with a great company called Accreditation, who were able to kind of take that challenge with us and work out a way of making some really engaging e-learning that could get across some quite big topics in quite an engaging way. I'll show you some screenshots in a minute. So I'm going to do my e-learning modules. I don't do all 5 at once. They're about 20 minutes each, but I get guided that I should probably do those within around my first month in role. Remember, I only do 16 hours a month, so I'll get through those e-learning modules. And also what I've got is I've got access to a digital toolkit of tools. So we use the Google Suite, where you've got your Google email, and you've got your Google Calendar, and you've got your Google Drive. So we've created a toolkit that just member pioneers can access on the Google Drive. And in that, you can access that on any device, at any place. Go in and go, right, I just need to know, I'm putting on a bake sale. What's the guidance on how to put on a bake sale? And I can go on there, I can print off, I can get a copy of my risk assessment form, I can find out how to complete a risk assessment. So that's that quick access information that I can get to from a Google Drive, from a little digital toolkit. So that's my self-learn bit. So I think I've got a couple of screenshots. This just shows you the e-learning and how engaging it is. It works on, it's responsive content. So that was something as co-op we've not done before. We've always built to, for colleagues, we can always say they're going to be using a desktop computer that is this specification, or a laptop, a HP laptop. With these guys, they're using their own devices. They could use anything. So we needed content that would work on absolutely any device. So it works on iPads, smartphones, Android, and anything. You get the same experience, the same content. So it looks like that. It's very all in our sort of We have quite heavy brand guidelines, so it's all within our illustrative style and how we need to do things. Uses sort of like quizzes and stuff to engage you, loads of videos that we've got of our member pioneers explaining their experiences, etc. So then you're going to learn through doing. So I did do the face-to-face bit. So we decided, although we wanted this digital experience, actually this role has a risk of feeling quite lonely, even though you're working within communities and you've got these digital support networks. What you don't see very often is other people that do the same job as you. And we felt it was really important that we still got people together in a room to learn from each other, to make the most of having some really experienced people that they can talk to and ask questions of, and to really learn and engage with each other. So, you know, I've facilitated a couple of these and I really have facilitated them. You don't do a lot because the day runs itself and it's all about them talking to each other. So we've kept that day in there. That is probably it is the most expensive part of this whole learning piece because we've got huge expensive venues and travelling people in, so we run them regionally. We don't have hugely high numbers because because they're so dispersed, it's hard to get people to places, so we're paying for accommodation, etc. But we've deemed it to be absolutely worth it, and the evaluation results from that are showing us that it's the right thing to do. And for as long as I can still get my budget to do that, I will continue to have that face-to-face interaction. But that's not day one. You know, originally I was thinking day one, I've started a new job and I go here. Day one as a member pioneer, I've got my day job as a lawyer. And I'm going to have to go all the way down to London and be sick on the train, which I nearly was on the way down here. I didn't realise I got train sick. But that's quite a daunting experience. So actually I'm doing this at about weeks 4 to week 6 into roles. So I've done my self-learning, I've got a bit of confidence, I know what I don't know, I know what questions I need to ask, I know how to make the most of being in that room. And I'm also getting stuck in and learning through doing, which, as we all know, that's the main way you learn. So, you know, I'm getting that experience. I'm actually getting started. The e-learning prompts me and gives me some ideas and suggestions. I go out, I try them, and I see what works for me. And finally, I think I've got a picture. Yay, that's everyone on our welcome days, enjoying themselves. Good. And then sharing. So this was really cool for me that we've not managed to make work across the rest of the co-op, but I've been able to make it work with member pioneers. And I do think partly it's due to the nature of the role. It's a smaller, more contained audience that we've got with 70,000 colleagues, but what we have done is created a really great learning community using Google+. So we've got this Google suite of tools already, we've got the Google Drive. Anyone that's got the Google suite will also have access to Google+. And we've created a member pioneer community in there. And that community is where you can go and you can share your stories. I think I have got a picture. So this is them on there. They're sort of making connections with each other. Hi, I'm Jackie. I'm a new member pioneer. Just started in Manchester. What's everyone else doing? So I'm starting to get to know people. I'm telling everyone what I'm doing. I'm sharing my pictures. And I think that in this sort of work where it is quite fluffy, for me to be able to say, oh, great, what's Elsa doing? Oh, it looks like she's doing some litter picking. Oh, I'll do that in my community. I'll get that piece going. It is one of the best ways for them to learn. They're sharing ideas and supporting each other. So what we've started to see them doing, and I've just called it a learning community, which I knew was what it was, but we've never actually called it anything to do with learning. So we've set up this community, and this is just about their place to share stuff and talk to each other. But for me, it's naturally ended up being a learning piece. It's not something we've said is training. This isn't part of your training, but actually they're doing it anyway. They're going on there and saying, guys, I'm really stuck. I don't quite know what to do. Does anyone get any ideas? So they're creating that like office sort of environment where I go to my colleagues and go, help, I don't know what I'm doing. They're getting that on there virtually, and that's working really nicely. Just finally, because Sarah's giving me the 5 minutes hand signal here, just quickly the results. And I think, you know, people are really loving it. They're enjoying going on the welcome days. One of the main reasons I'm not going to get rid of it. We have 170 members in our Google Plus community, so not every member pioneer is engaged with that yet. Bear in mind, some of that 214 I put up originally, I only started, I think we did an intake of about 30 people 2 weeks ago, didn't we? So it's, you know, hopefully they're on their way and they're going to get on there. They love the e-learning, so 4.4 out of 5 in terms of how engaging it is, which is really great. And we've done some listening groups as part of the evaluation, and it's the thing they say they like most. So that's going down really, really well. And we're hearing some great stuff. And I think, in a way, the results speak for themselves when we go on to that Google Plus community and we see them posting all the cool stuff they're doing, and we see them posting on Facebook and tweeting, and we see all the stuff that's happening. It shows that the learning's having an impact because they're able to carry out this role that's a bit fluffy and a bit weird, and they get it because they've done the e-learning and they've been on the welcome day. So I think it's working. And that's me. Hey, any questions? Sorry, I went over a little bit.
What platform did you use? And also, why did you not embed the social aspect in the learning platform?
Okay, yeah, good question. So what platform we used? So we used a platform provided by Actian called the Knowledge Centre. So that does have a link to Google+, but as a business, we use the Google Suite anyway, and they're going to be using that for their Drive. So it kind of made sense. I suppose that I think there might be a time where we might try and look to go, Google's here, we need the Knowledge Centre to host the e-learning aspect of it. We could start to look at how those two things might come together, because you're right now they're going on to the Knowledge Centre for their e-learning aspect, and they're going somewhere else for their digital tools and the community. So we might look to bring that together into one place. So yeah, good point.
And the question for Jackie?
Oh, they're all fed up. They probably need a wee. I do. It's crazy, isn't it? Not been okay.
Can I just ask you a question? I'm going to go away and do something entirely different. Ned.
Thank you very much for those. My question is probably more to Guy than the others, but by all means, if there's an element to it that you can chip in on, I'd be appreciative. With regards to the kind of online suite of different media offerings that you had, can I just ask, how do you go about promoting that to the business so that your partners actively go in to see it? Because where we are, that culture's not quite there, and I want to know kind of how we can start pushing in that direction.
Can you hear me at the back? Hear me? Yeah. It's a really good question, and I would be honest to say I don't think we've got the Holy Grail. So there's a facility within the platform itself where we can publish news items, so we can alert people on the landing page to changes, additions, etc. We also have quite a comprehensive internal communications process, weekly updates, etc., briefings, where there's an opportunity for us to get that news out as well. I have to say, it's probably one of the hardest things because, of course, I'm sure our organisation is no different to your own. You know, we flood people with an awful lot of information, and so people have to be ever more discerning about what they read and what they don't. So you have to make your communication stand out. And one of the things we want to develop within the system is the idea of some social learning, so we get people much more engaged with sharing information with themselves. Oh, did you see that great piece of content over there? Have you done that? That's kind of on us at the moment. We want to try and engender a bit of group participation, if that makes sense. But it's a really good question, a challenge, and we certainly haven't cracked it, but we've made good inroads.
Another question?
My question's for Guy as well. What challenges did you face when you were sending education in whatever format out to other countries or markets? Because we have to send stuff to Thailand, to China, to Korea, and it originates in the UK. So how does that filter down to other markets with different cultural sensitivities and so on and so forth?
Again, a really great question, and if I'm really honest, we were slightly arrogant in the beginning. So we've had our Asia operation for only 3 or 4 years, and we've got better at that, but we kind of start, when I say arrogant, what I mean by that is the notion of our business is UK-centric. You guys can just localise it yourselves, can't you? Actually, they're very different jurisdictions, and they all come under very different regulatory boards and compliance processes. So we have had to think about how we localise content. We're not there yet, but that probably does mean it's content by content in terms of, so this is a new product or service or corporate initiative, so how do we make that available to the UK, and how might it differ in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore? So it's a really good question, because unless you're proactive in your thinking process, actually you can alienate a whole community, which is probably what we did initially, inadvertently.
A question for Jackie or Angie?
How do you become a pioneer?
Yeah, who's got a question for Jackie or Angie?
Thank you. It's a general question probably for everybody, but you've all talked about the importance of reaching a distributed workforce. Can you quantify any cost savings that it has meant back to you for your costs in training or anything like that, each of you?
How we expanded on the bigger business, we've got something like 22,000 learners now that are online, completing 3 mandatory modules for the business, on top of the event staff that are completing quite a lot of their comprehensive package. So I don't have exact figures, but it is definitely more cost effective than getting 22,000 people into a classroom.
It's kind of different for mine because it was a start from new, so I haven't got a comparison to make a saving, if you get me. So.
Yeah, we've saved billions, literally billions. In terms of face-to-face resource, if we try to replicate all our offering in one channel, face-to-face, we would need a learning division 2, 3, 4 times the size that we currently have. The other thing, in terms of online exams, is imagine the saving in resource for invigilation. So as an organisation, we deploy something like 10,000, 15,000 exams a year across the partnership globally. If you extrapolate the numbers in terms of 20 minutes, 30 minutes invigilation time, one-on-one, and that's all gone. So, yeah, huge.
Can I just ask you to thank our really interesting speakers? If you've got questions, grab them as they're going out. As they're going off for lunch, it is lunchtime now. But can I ask you please to thank our 3 speakers for a really interesting set of stories.